Welcome to our second episode of the Toronto Brick by Brick podcast with Core Realty. My name is Pawel. I'm the broker of record at Core Realty. And with me today, I have the lovely Jenny Bowie, who is a realtor and associate partner here at Core Realty, and an absolute top notch listing agent. And I don't know how she does everything with two little kids running around, but you're amazing, Jenny. Thank you for
Thank
joining us today.
you. Thank you. Hello.
So we've got a really interesting podcast today. The Liberals have officially called an election in Canada. So on April 28th, we are going to be going to the polls. And with yesterday's announcements from the Trump campaign, um, oh, I'm gonna have to edit that part out, eh? So, with the announcement yesterday from the United States that Trump is implementing 25% tariffs on all automobiles coming out of Canada as well as other places around the globe, that is going to have a huge, huge impact, specifically on Ontario. And just for clarity, this is not simply on completed vehicles. So any parts or anything like that that's manufactured in Canada is also going to be taxed at 25%. So technically it does raise prices for US customers, but our US customers going to shift their buying preferences towards other brands. But I think we're in a very pivotal moment in Canada and Canadian politics. It feels like we're being attacked by one of our best friends to the south. And this might be one of the most important elections that we have or we've had in the last 10, 20 years. What are your thoughts, Jenny?
Um, when Mark Carney got announced as, the Liberal leadership, I was I was like, okay, well now it feels like more of a fair game against Pierre because leadership in the Liberals was kind of weak before, but now I feel like they might even have a chance if we weren't so maybe jaded towards them in the last 10 years, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and the recent polls do show that ever since Trudeau was replaced by Carney, the Liberal Party has increased the chances of actually winning
Wow.
this election. So it'll be really, really interesting. But for our conversation today, I think just to provide everyone that's listening some clarity, we're going to be talking about the different policies, specifically the Liberals and Conservatives have talked about or have publicly announced as they might relate to real estate. Well, we're not going to pull any punches. We'll give you our honest opinions. We're not perfect in everything, but we do have some experience, and we'll definitely share the insights that we have. And I think a really, really good place to start, Jenny, is immigration, because over the last 5 years, specifically in and around the pandemic and shortly after the pandemic, a large a major factor for why real estate exploded in Canada, partly for sure is low interest rates, but immigration numbers had a huge, huge impact. So let's look at some of the immigration policy announcements from. Shall we start from the Liberal side?
Let's go liberals and then conservative. So liberals, they're pro-immigration. So this is a
Mhm.
quote from the Liberal Party platform. Immigration is vital to Canada's future prosperity, end quote. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so it's interesting because there was one of his first political appointments was a person by the name of Mark Wiseman, who has ties to the World Economic Forum, and he has advocated for increasing Canada's population. I'm just reading this to 100 million people by 2100. So I guess the real question is if they've been very pro immigration over the last 5, 10 years, and I would say that liberals generally have been, is there any reason to believe that that is really going to change? So if it isn't going to change, like what kind of impact do you see that having on Canadian real estate, or specifically Toronto?
Yeah, well, there's already a demand from people already in Toronto for real estate here that they can't afford. Bringing in a lot more immigration is obviously going to drive up the price, and we just don't have enough supply for everybody. However, I'm kind of biased because I am a homeowner and a landlord. So prices going up kind of works in my favor. I know that sounds totally selfish, but I mean, two-thirds of Canadians own homes. So I'm not just speaking for myself here when it does kind of work in our favor.
For sure. And I agree with you because I'm a homeowner, I'm a landlord as well, but now I'm a recent dad. And I look at
Oh,
it from the
fair.
perspective of, is my daughter going to be able to afford real estate in the future? Is the burden of her getting a home going to fall on my shoulders? Because by the time she gets to that age where she can actually buy a home, is it going to be so unaffordable that she's going to be a renter for life? So from one perspective, if you're looking at it, and I agree with you, it gives you a lot of leverage if you own real estate right now and property
Mhm.
prices continue to appreciate, whether it's accessing home equity lines of credit to help your kids buy properties in the future, or using the equity of your home for retirement, or for starting all sorts of business. That's very, very attractive. But I guess for the average Canadian, where do you think that leaves them?
Well, I think, like I said, the average Canadian, I read on there was a Canadian census in 2021 that said one third of Canadians are renters, which means two-thirds are homeowners. So I would say that actually skews it a little bit, saying that a lot of Canadians actually do own property, which technically is in their favor, right?
Hmm.
In regards to you mentioning about your offsprings and stuff like that, the great thing is, we own property now. And
Hmm.
I feel like that was already a question of like, can my children afford property? Like that was a question long before we had kids. Um,
Okay.
like 10 years ago, I remember this like discussion already being discussed with amongst my mom and her friends and stuff like that. And, you know, um, right now, the people that I am helping, buy their first home, they're also getting lines of credit from their parents, or their parents and are refinancing their home to help out their kids. So it's already a thing that's already happening. And so maybe more wealth in terms of increasing prices will actually work in their favor as well, because then we just have more money to
Mhm.
give.
Yeah, I suppose the proverbial train, if you're on the train already, you'll probably
That's
be
that.
okay. But if you're a new immigrant, or if you're from a lower income family that hasn't been able to jump on that train in the future, it may become even more difficult. I think another
100%.
angle to look at it is, I feel like we're at a very unique crossroads where we haven't been in a very long time, in the sense that if the Liberal Party were to be elected, and then they pursue this policy of adding 100 million, or reaching 100 million people in terms of population by 2100. The challenge with that is our pre-construction industry is absolutely collapsing because there are no pre-construction sales happening right now. And a lot of projects are being canceled. Developers are going bankrupt. Um, you know, I think I think the stats show that by 2029 or 2030, we're going to be building almost no new construction. So we've
That's
had a
scary.
supply issue for a very, very long time. And now that supply issues is being, exacerbated quite significantly. And then if you throw on significant immigration on top of that, we're going to have serious, serious problems down the line. Now, that might not happen in a year or 2 or 3 years from now. It may not even be something that we really truly feel the impact of while Carney is in power, if he were to get elected in the first, say, for the just one term. But down the line, 2030 onwards, if those immigration numbers spike and our pre-construction side of the supply chain doesn't keep up with that, we're going to have significant issues, right? So let's flip it on the conservative side. This is what the Conservative Party housing plan says: immigration must match our capacity to house new Canadians. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean,
And just to add one additional note, we will set immigration levels based on housing construction. So my interpretation of that is, they're going to only allow the amount of people into this country that equivalent to the number of homes that we're going to be building. Is that a fair interpretation of that, would you say?
That's yeah, so that's kind of what I was thinking. Like that, I feel like that sentence makes complete sense. In practicality wise, I'm like, how do you execute that? Is there somebody like constantly monitoring like these levels? Like, or is the ball going to be dropped and then, it's going to be more construction there than there is immigration, and then the construction industry is going to go bust again, like we're experiencing now. Like, how does that actually play out, or is it kind of just like a fluffy statement? Like, I want to know
I
how
think
this
you're
would be implicated.
absolutely right in that. I think you're absolutely right with that because if you look at the track record of any political party, there's not a single, whether it's the NDP, the Conservatives, or the Liberals, there hasn't been a single party that hasn't said they were going to build more homes. And when you look at that track record, they didn't really build a lot more new homes. So it's pretty accurate to say that there's reservations about how many people or how much new construction we're actually going to add, regardless of whether it's conservatives or liberals. But I guess the other factor is the immigration. So
Yeah, I
perhaps
feel like
it just go ahead.
it's like a the chicken does the chicken become before the egg kind of situation where like the construction industry obviously needs a lot of demand to kind of get it up and going, because construction loans do cost a lot. They have to put a certain amount of
Mhm.
down payment down, and consistently do have sales going to get further construction loans and stuff like that. But big now our pre-construction is slowed down to almost a halting stop, but immigration hasn't picked up either. So like, how do you get construction going without immigration?
Yeah, that's fair. So I do have an additional note to add. Immediately below that sentence in their housing plan, the conservatives say we will prioritize skilled trades immigrants to build more homes. So effectively, they're saying that rather than, I guess, allowing immigration to continue as it is, where we've, I guess, predominantly, I feel like it's been people in the tech sector. We need to
Yeah.
prioritize more tradespeople, plumbers, electricians, so that we can meet the demand of the current population, but also of any future immigrants. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I have a lot of thoughts on this. When it comes to like skilled immigrants, will it all just come from like one country or just one gender? Because we all know a lot of women don't like to get into trades. But I feel like it's something a lot of Canadians will start to complain about when immigration
Mm.
comes from like one country. Um, but also, I just remember like back in high school, teachers already were urging us to get into trade school because there was a lot of work, but a lot of work, and then obviously the monetary incentive was there. But I just feel like we're just a bunch of lazy Canadians, like myself included. I don't want to be out there in like exposed to the environments when I could be in a temperature controlled office. So I just feel like maybe start giving bonuses, maybe even to students to get into trade school, just like how they do with people getting into the financial sector, where they give you like signing bonuses. Maybe that could incentivize more people in Canada to pick up those jobs as well. Maybe that's an easier place to start.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like socially, it seems like if you go into trades, it's less acceptable.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not as prestigious as having an office job, even though nowadays I feel like a lot of tradespeople can make more money than people sitting in an office.
1,000%.
But I guess
1,000%.
another perspective on that, and we actually did a video about this, is Canada's dropping birth rate. So one of the big issues we're having globally is that birth rates are falling off a cliff. I believe on the metric right now is that Canada's birth rate is 1.4 children per woman.
Mm.
And if you were to extrapolate that by 2100, that means that our population, assuming we had zero new immigration, so let's just say there was zero new immigration, that birth rate were to continue at its current pace, by 2100, Canada's population, which they estimate is going to be 3 generations, would actually be cut in half.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
and this is a global problem. We're experiencing, the United States is experiencing low birth rates. Japan, Korea, Russia. It seems like it's an issue of all developed nations. And right now, our economy and our real estate market is propped up by immigration. So I think that the two perspectives to look at, from one perspective, it's like, oh, we've had too much immigration. It's driven prices through the roof. This is crazy. Why are we allowing so many people into Canada? The alternative perspective is, well, if we don't have immigration, our population will actually decline because we're not even replacing ourselves right now.
Yeah, yeah. I think so I read Elon Musk's book way back, and he was saying that people need to at least have 2 kids. The replacement rate is 2.4 or 2.2 or something like that.
2.2, I think it is. I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
2.2.
So
You
yeah,
gotta
so
take into consideration like early deaths and things, sickness.
exactly. So moral of the story is have more kids.
Yeah. And if not, Elon will do it for us.
Yeah, it's just so funny because that one thing that he said like really stuck with me, and I was like, okay, so I need to have at least 2 kids to contribute to Canada's
Yes, I
economy.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just specifically with immigration, I guess, what is your perspective between liberal and conservative based on what they're saying? Where do you think we need to go, at least for the next 4 years?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to have more. I think it's would work in our favor to have more skilled labor workers. I just don't know, like, is that really possible? Are we just going to be pulling like one gender out? Do you know what I mean? Like, is Canada just going to be saturated with men?
Interesting perspective. It's not something that I would have thought of, but as a female, I guess your perspective is different. And I think it is very important that we do, obviously, if we're if we're allowing people to come into this country, we got to make sure that it's both genders, it's multicultural. That's a fair question. I guess we don't know. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that 50% or 70% of the people that are going to be coming are going to be tradespeople, but I think any emphasis on
I agree.
tradespeople
Is a
over
good thing. I agree.
other fields that are maybe less important nowadays, um, is a move in the positive direction.
I'm pro immigration on that front. I guess being a first generation Canadian myself, would I be first generation? I don't know.
Were you born here, Jenny?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't born here.
So your
I'm
kids
a
are first generation.
yes, I am a landed immigrant. So I
Yeah,
am very pro immigration. I think it does help our economy, and obviously it props up the construction sector as well, um, because without immigration, there's the housing starts have pretty much like diminished since we've kind of cut off immigration, but also rental prices are not very great.
that's right. Yes, rental prices
Mm,
are collapsing at the moment, and
yeah,
part of that is because there's so many people on temporary work permits or temporary visas, whether it's student visas
student
or
visa.
otherwise, that are leaving the country because their visas are expiring this year or next year. So we've definitely felt that impact, and there's more pre-con projects that are set for completion this year. So those people holding condos as investments and may feel the pain a little bit more if prices continue going down on the rental side, and then if rates don't continue to decrease, there could be additional pain. So yes, immigration is definitely important. I think my perspective on this is, and I feel like I've never been particularly attached to a political party. I've sort of
Hmm.
jumped between one and the other, and I think for the next 4 years, we need more moderate immigration. Needs to be more precise in terms of, I think with what the conservatives are proposing, more tradespeople, I think is the right measure for the next 4 years. Whether or not that is the right measure 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now, we'll circle back. I never want to say that this is the one party and this is the one direction that I want to move forward on, but I think maybe taming the immigration numbers a little bit and then being more selective with who we allow into the country, or at least allow those people that are going to help build our infrastructure, that are going to help build more homes. that's going to be super important for the next 4 years.
I'm curious though, those people that are skilled workers, like I feel like Canada does let in a lot of people who have money, right? That may not be skilled, but let's just say, for example, skilled workers don't necessarily have that amount of money. Like, what happens then?
I think they still contribute to the economy in different ways. So if you're allowing people with significant, I guess, net worths to move into the country, they're investing funds
Mm,
into the economy. Whereas if you're allowing immigration via tradespeople, they're investing a different type of
mm,
capital, and it's
okay.
labor
Human
capital
capital.
into the economy. So I think both are very, very important. I think they drive the economy in different ways, but I think both are equally important.
Hmm, very
Interesting
interesting.
note. You heard about the $5 million visa, green card visa that Trump proposed? So
Five
if you want
million?
to sorry. So yeah. So if you want to get a green card in Canada, or he called it, I don't remember the exact reference, but it's a form of green card, a super green card, call it. Um, you can pay $5 million and get your green card. So he's
Wait, with a
actually a
B?
reasonable
Billion or million?
5 million. So for $5 million, you could buy a U.S. Green card effectively. That's what Trump proposed. I think it was
Wow.
like 4 weeks ago, and he sold 1,000 of them. So the U.S. has already made billions
Holy
through
shit.
that one little
Wow.
weird policy. But anyway, we'll shift to we've covered the immigration front. Why don't we tackle a few in smaller policies and comments that both parties have made, and then we can talk about that. So on the first time home buyer front, so I think this one's really, really interesting, and I'm curious to see what your perspective is. The Liberals are offering shared equity mortgages to lower costs for first time buyers. So their quote is, "We will help first time buyers by co-investing in their homes." So what I think this means is, let's say you need to buy a home for $1 million, but you can only qualify for 500,000, whether that's because of your financing or because of your down payment. The government will buy and co-own the other 50% to help you get to that $1 million. It's an interesting policy. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So, when I worked for Daniel's Corporation, we already were doing things like this through CMHC for qualified individuals. The only problem with qualifying was that it took so long. And whereas the 10-day cooling period was, 10 days, and after 10 days, you're like locked in. Whether you can afford this place or not after those 10 days, while you're trying to work things out with CMHC, that was like your problem. So I don't know how, logistically that would work because I saw it not working in that sense when I was working for Daniels. But when it did work, it helped people out immensely, and people did not mind giving up a stakehold of their property to do so because it gave them a leg up. I see this as kind of it's kind of like when you start a partnership, right? Like one person either has the funds or the knowledge. I just see it as like a business partnership. You can't get to where you wanted without this person, so obviously they need to be compensated somehow, right? So I guess in this case, it's the government, but they have. I see it as an opportunity to like spread the liability and get the funds that you need. Um, I'm actually really big on this policy. I think it's great. I just don't know if it will work out logistically in the sense of like when you sign to get your like put an offer in on the house, like how long is it going to actually take for this to like come into play? Like, can you back out before that time? Like, will the government agree that um, this house is maybe under appraised? I don't know. Like, there's so many other complications with this, but I think this is great in theory. Um,
Okay.
I wanted to quote a really smart lady, and she said, "Why spend mine when I can spend yours?" And this is Little
I
Kim.
love
And this is
that.
Little Kim, because like, come on, like,
Oh
why
my
spend my own
goodness.
money when I can spend your money?
Interesting. Okay, so I love that you brought this point up, and this is a really good example of why it's important to have conversations with people, because you have that practical insight to know that, hey, this is a really great idea, but it has practical implementation concerns. And it's
Mhm.
not something that I truly thought about. So your perspective is very insightful. And you're right, like especially in Toronto, where if we do return to a market, or in some segments of the market right now, for example, if you're buying a detached home or semi-detached home in Leslieville, Riverdale, in the East End, there's still multiple offers. So
Oh,
if
yeah.
you're going in and buying with the government, what does that process actually look like? How practical is it?
Yeah.
I mean, there is so much execution risk on that
Mhm.
front. And
Mhm.
so I guess the idea behind it is very attractive. Why spend mine when I could spend yours? I'm on board with that. I think that partnering with other businesses, with other people, is has a lot of value. You know, you and I have partnered on numerous things, and we both benefited tremendously. So I am all for that. But it's interesting perspective, because is it actually gonna work? How is this going to be put into practice if you're competing in a competitive market like Toronto?
Yeah, and, like, I remember when I was working for Daniels, like, CMHC would take months to get back to people, like, if they qualified or not, but, like, they've already locked in to the contract, so they already had to give 5% down payment. So
Mm,
if they were not to qualify through this program with CMHC, then they would essentially lose their deposit or go into default, and then what, the builder will sue you? Like, you're
mm.
fucked.
I don't trust the bureaucracy at the government.
I
Everything
know.
takes way longer than it
Yes,
should. I
for
just
for
filed
sure.
for an amendment for a permit for a walkout basement apartment. I'm simply removing one footing from the drawings, and it's been with the city for over 3 weeks, and I still haven't
Oh
gotten a
god.
response, despite it sending multiple emails, calls. So you're right. There is that execution risk, and we don't know how practical it is. Okay, so here's another policy that the Liberals have suggested. Well, it's actually two, but they're very similar. So number one is we will remove the GST on new rental construction. This is again the Liberals. And they're also going to waive GST for first time home buyers on homes under $1 million. I think those are two kind of um, one and the same, because GST only applies if you're buying new construction anyway. So effectively, what it means is they're eliminating GST on homes purchases under $1 million. What are your thoughts?
Only first-time home buyers.
Yes.
Yes. Um, I think buying pre-con is already so daunting, and this definitely will help people. Definitely help decrease that barrier, because people who are buying pre-con have so much other fees to worry about that they didn't even think about. So, like GST, sometimes it's not discussed, and development levies. Hello, sometimes you get slapped by like $100,000 just to build streets and street lights and plumbing, sewage, all that jazz. So obviously, this is going to make it a lot more attractive for especially people buying for the first time a
Mm,
pre-con. So in Ontario, we call it HST, but it's 13% HST. So 13% HST on a $1 million home is
13,000.
$130,000. So that's a lot of that's like a disgusting amount of money and savings that first time home buyers will need once they purchase a house. So I think this is great. This is probably my favorite policy from the Liberals.
Interesting, interesting. So
Yes,
I have
it
a
is.
counter opinion to that. I
Okay, go.
I don't think this policy matters. I don't
Why?
care for this policy at all. I
Okay.
don't think first-time homebuyers should be encouraged to buy pre-construction. So
Oh, spicy,
first
spicy thought.
I feel like first-time home buyers need the most help, and pre-construction is the most risky. Whether it's a developer that goes under, they cancel the project and then
Fair.
resell it at higher prices. It forces first-time home buyers to wait for 3, 4, 5 years for the project to be complete, and you're buying at future prices today. So I don't like this for first-time home buyers. I feel like this
Hmm.
incentivizes. I feel like this policy is built to help developers. Anything to help
I
pre-construction
guess.
sales.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
this is a policy, advertises helping first-time home buyers, but it's actually It's just a facade. It's there to help developers. Where I think that I would change this policy is remove all land transfer taxes for first-time home buyers,
Yes, fuck yes.
or allow a larger withdrawal from your RSP.
Didn't they
Anything like
do
that.
something like
Provide.
that?
Pardon me.
They had
There is
a savings plan,
there is
right?
an amount of money that you can take out from your RSP and use that as your down payment, but then you have to repay it over 15 years. The other perspective on that is, well, why even force them to repay it? Just give people the opportunity to save for their first home with pre-tax dollars. If
Mm,
you really want to help first-time home buyers, let them get into the market. Resale offers less risk. You get the item, you get the product or the condo or the house right away. So for me, this
okay,
one smells fishy. I feel like they're
okay.
trying to help their developer friends. What are your thoughts?
Um, okay, so I feel like also as a first time home buyer, sometimes you don't have the deposit up front, and with the structure of how developers structure their down payment, it actually adds some flexibility there. Like you don't have to pay the whatever percentage up front, so it gives them time to kind of work up to those down payments. But I do see your point about like helping developers, which I don't think is such a bad thing because
Okay.
like we're complaining about how there's not a lot of construction
Right.
starts, and so maybe this is a win-win.
So here's another thought: is maybe the combination of execution risk from the shared equity mortgages and the combination with being able to waive the HST on pre-construction, those two would actually go really well together for first-time home buyers because again, like there's no execution risk, right? Because you have 3, 4, 5 years to apply for that mortgage to co-own with the government, and then you save on the GST, HST, whatever it is. So those two could line up really well together. So I do
Yeah.
see I'm connecting the dots. So there's some positives there, but interesting perspectives. I personally am very against pre-construction, especially for first-time home buyers. But I can see where, for some people, if you don't have the down payment, that could be a concern. So that is a
I mean,
very fair perspective.
I've bought two, like both of the properties I owned are pre-con, so I think I'm a little bit more like, I wouldn't say like risk, it's not risk adverse for me because I evaluate them correctly before I buy them. But I mean, there's some good deals with it that are pre-con if you know where to find them. Calm
I
down.
agree with that 100%. There are definitely good deals, but I guess for the average person, how much knowledge do they have, or are they really being pushed? And this is me talking poorly
Yeah.
about our own industry, but when there's 4 to 6% commissions available to sales reps, how active are they going to be pushing that particular project versus providing sound advice and being like, hey, maybe look at resale because it's a better option. But anyway, moving on.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to touch.
Yes.
You said something about like the different policies that you would put in if you were a politician. So I thought those were really great as well. But I don't think any of the parties are implementing any of your suggestions, right? Even though
Which one?
they're
No,
very good.
they're not. No, no. Those are my own. If I was running, but I could
Yeah,
never
yeah.
run because I'm a landed
Vote
immigrant.
have.
Okay.
Okay, we can move on now.
Perfect. Okay, so should we cover a few more things on the liberal side, and then we'll jump to the conservative? So there's two more
Mhm.
points.
Yes.
So taxes on corporate landlords, levies tax. So the liberals are saying to levy taxes on large rental owners to fund affordable housing. We will tax large corporation landlords to solve the housing crisis. So effectively, if you want to build rental, or if you have a lot of rental buildings, we're going to tax you more. I don't know how I feel about that, but and then the other part is, and this is a bigger one, maybe we'll focus more on this one, but ban on blind bidding. We will ban blind bidding to make the process fair. So effectively, an offer nights, no more secret prices, everything's going to be visible. What are your thoughts on those two?
Okay, so taxes on corporate landlords. I thought it was really counterintuitive when they're trying to encourage new construction, rental construction. Like, doesn't this kind of work against it? It's like, yeah, here, build us some rental condos, rental properties, but be wary because we're going to tax the shit out of you. Like, it doesn't really make sense to me,
I agree.
right?
Find the money elsewhere. And do I really trust that you're going to use that money to solve the housing crisis? You've had 9 years to solve the housing crisis and you haven't solved it. It's gotten worse.
Oh
So I
shit.
don't trust. We pay enough taxes, both on the personal side and on the corporate side. Anytime we provide anytime any party says, "Oh, we're going to tax this," or that's a bad thing. We don't need more taxes, no matter what.
That's fair.
Um,
Fair.
that
Fair.
that's my perspective on that. But what are your thoughts on the blind bidding?
Ooh, yeah.
This is a spicy. This is a
It
spicy
is
one.
so spicy. I was when I was reading this, I was just like, what are my thoughts? Because I have so many opinions. I would like to understand how they are defining fairness, first of all,
Hmm.
because what I deem fair is not necessarily what, the seller may see as fair. So
Hmm.
why I say this is I'm going to get into a story because I'm a little bit bitter. I put in an offer for a house for a client and we lost on offer night because somebody had a buyer's letter and they paid $20,000 less than us.
Oh wow.
Um, yes. So to me, that wasn't fair because
Hmm.
to me, fairness, I guess, was like price and what was on the contract and what was maybe most favorable to the seller. But at the end of the day, it's their house. Like they can sell to whoever the hell they want. They don't have to give it to me because I'm willing to pay more. Um, but on the other hand, I feel like the transparency will actually make realtors look less like scumbags because we people love to blame us for driving up housing prices, and so maybe laying out all the cards will make buyers feel less apprehensive about the whole process. But I don't know, this wasn't my favorite like policy.
Yeah. So I think it's a little bit of government overreach from the buyer's perspective. Sure, you want to know what the other price is, but at the end of the day, like, who's the government to tell the sellers how they have to sell their property? We at the end of the day, we do live in a capitalistic society. Let's remove all this red tape barriers. Let people sell how they want to sell. If they want to sell it openly, let them. And we do have the option now with Tressa. Sellers do have the right to share the prices, but I think the I think the primary focus of this policy was to help, or it gives the perception like they want to lower prices. Like if the bidding process is transparent, prices are going to be lower because people are going to bid less. I lived in Australia. Australia currently has an auction system, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Like, prices are sky high. It doesn't change anything. If you want to focus on lowering house prices or making it easier for buyers to get in, focus on the supply.
100%.
Focus on getting rid of the red tape on the construction side. Let people build more. The problem is we have so much NIMBYism in the city as well. Like if you're so
Mm-hmm.
here's actually a
So
really
true.
good example. So I worked with a small developer and he gave me some really, really good insight. So he what he would do is he would buy larger lots in Etobicoke. So let's say you have 100-foot wide lot. He would tear down that home and build two homes on that land. Okay, so he'd tear it down and build two homes. He said that the local councillor there would oppose absolutely every project. And as a small time developer, and the reason for that is because, Karen in the back was complaining, oh, I don't want a big house in front of me. Or the same thing applies to laneways and garden suites. Like we applied to the city to build a right of way laneway, and the neighbor actually had um, I couldn't believe he said this, but when he went to the meeting, he said, "Well, I want privacy in my backyard for when I'm hanging out in the hot tub." It's like, okay, I get it. Like, it sucks, but like your privacy in your hot tub, it does not take priority over providing affordable housing in the city. And
Ooh.
and the problem is, like, in a lot of situations, these small time developers just don't have the capital uh, to fight these councillors to go to the OMB or what it was before. Whereas big developers have the money, they can hold on to the land and be like, okay, local councillor, whatever, we're just going to take it to the tribunal and see how, and we're going to be able to build whatever we want anyway. So Big developers don't have a problem with it, but little time small developers do have a problem with it. So
Yeah.
um, anyway, I
That
think I got
actually
off
go
track.
Yeah, actually, well, that goes into one of their other, the conservatives' key housing policies, which is building homes, not bureaucracy plan. And it penalizes municipalities that delay construction with fines and rewards fast one with bonuses. So I feel like that kind of loops into what you were saying about all those, what do you call it?
NIMBYs,
Yeah,
not in my backyard.
not in my backyard.
Yeah,
So
I'm
I
all
actually,
for affordable housing. Yes, we need more housing. We need more
yeah,
development. It's not in my backyard.
yeah, somewhere else.
Yes, yes.
So I actually like this one a lot because I think the building process should be streamlined for efficiency. And like you said, there's always so much holdup within the government to prevent these things. Whereas like people need housing. It's not a matter of appeasing everybody, but like if we think housing is so important, then like let's make it quicker. Let's make it more efficient. Um, yeah, so it's so funny because I actually wrote down that I heard countless stories from you of, building inspectors giving you a hard time about closing off permits over such novel things, which is so ridiculous. Because
Yeah.
really, at the end of the day, all you're trying to do is build safe basement rentals for tenants. Like,
Hmm.
that's crazy.
Yeah. So I'm not.
However, oh,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead. You
No, no,
finish
no.
it.
Please, please, please don't lose your train of thought.
Sorry. So I also wrote down that I also feel that some other Ontario cities are kind of on the right track though, because like now Toronto is accelerating permits for laneway houses, garden suites. Markham is also big on building coach houses to sell.
Interesting.
Brampton and Mississauga have been making a lot of legal basement suites a priority. So I love that for Toronto. So I love this policy.
Yeah, anything that removes red tape would be awesome. I feel like the cities really need an incentive or a push to get things going. We going back to that permit that I told you about, where we resubmitted a permit just to remove one piece of footing. Everything else is the same, and we're 3 4 weeks in, and the problem is like our permits are stuck in between permits of big developers that are submitting projects
Mm,
for subdivisions for condos, and I get it. This city could be understaffed. The city could have budget concerns. I don't care. I don't care because the little guy should have the little guy. The city should make it easier for the little guy to get permits. There is a reason why I would say 80 to 90% of basement apartments in the city of Toronto
are
are
illegal.
illegal. It's because the city has put up so much red tape. Why would you do it? Like, why would you go through the process of getting permits? It's absolutely crazy. It's absolutely crazy. If you wanted to just relocate your kitchen or change the where the sink is, you're moving plumbing, so now you have to apply to the city. It could take you a month to 3 months to get a permit just to do simple tasks. So
That's
I feel
crazy.
like on the municipal side, these building departments need to create a different channel for renovators and
I
small
agree.
developers, or just homeowners, to be able to fast track these projects so they're
Yeah,
actually incentivized to get permits, to do things by code, to do things the right way, because there is absolutely no incentive for the little guy. So but on the in general, I agree with you. Like, building homes, no bureaucracy. I love it. Get rid of
mhm,
all the red tape, and build as much as you can. I'm all for that policy.
I love that. Okay, so moving on to the next point of the Conservative Party, tax breaks for rental reinvestment. So they're going to offer tax incentives for developers who reinvest profits into rental properties, and quote, tax breaks for developers who reinvest in rentals.
Okay. So I feel like we've experienced a bit of a shift in the pre-con market right now in Ontario, where small owners like yourself or me, if you owned a condo, rental prices are dropping, immigration's going out the window, interest rates are high. It's just not attractive to be a landlord in Ontario.
Yeah.
That's speaking specifically from the point of economics. Then you have the whole LTB issue, where if someone stops paying rent, it could be upwards of 18 months before you evict them, and you could lose absolutely everything. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that says, well, there's nothing guaranteed. You're taking on the risk of investing in real estate, then you should be okay with the risk that if somebody doesn't pay, like you got to deal with it. Okay, fine. But we are a society of rules and laws. And in any other situation, there are ways to regulate or to take action against people that have done you harm or have done you bad. The problem in Ontario is there isn't. There's so much red tape to evict someone. If you're not paying rent
Mhm.
1 month, 2 months, 3 months, how is it that the government is okay with that?
It's
How is it
stealing.
that we have to wait 9 months for a hearing? And by the way, if you get that hearing, they book so many cases in one day that if they don't get to your case, now you have to wait for a new hearing. It's ridiculous. So I think the direction that we're going to be heading, especially now that a lot of pre-construction projects are getting delayed or there's no investors to buy. There's been chatter about amongst developers that they're pivoting to purpose-built rentals.
Mm,
There's
mhm.
incentives to build purpose-built rentals. So what I could see happening in Ontario, which is already happening in Alberta for different reasons, is that average mom and pa are not going to be landlords in the future, but it's going to be big commercial companies that are going to be the landlords in the future. In Alberta, that's happening a lot. Like I went to Calgary 2 summers ago to look at real estate investment opportunities there, and one thing I noticed was how many purpose-built condos were going up. Purpose-built rental buildings were going up all over the city of Calgary, and they were all, big corporations. And the reason for that is the policies around tenant landlord relations are so skewed towards the landlord. Like you don't
Mhm.
automatically get to stay after a year. You actually have to sign a new lease, otherwise you have to move out. So corporations are like, yeah, you know what? Well, we'll take less rent, but there's far less risk. So I could see that coming
Mhm.
to Ontario, where the average investor is going to slowly disappear, and in the future we'll have more big corporations owning rental buildings and being the primary landlords.
Okay, it's so funny that you went in a totally different direction than what I was thinking. I was thinking more like, okay, you're going to incentivize developers into creating more affordable rentals for people, but if all the power is held by the corporation, they can do shady shit like that, where they keep the rents low, you move in, and then they jack up the rent because after 2018, there is no rent control in Ontario,
Correct.
for example.
Correct.
Um, and I already saw that happening to like people I knew personally who were renting non-rent controlled places. And I asked her like, so why did you go to a place that's not under rent control? And she said, well, my previous experience with mom and pop landlords is that they want to sell after a little while and I want to be guaranteed to my home. But she didn't think about the guarantee in pricing when it
Mm,
was relating to renting. And so, yeah, I've changed my mind on this. I thought
yeah.
because if there is more rentals, that would actually bring down the rent for people, right? But when a few companies hold on to a lot of the rental
Stock.
properties, exactly,
Yeah,
they have
monopolies,
power.
right? They become monopolies,
Correct.
oligopolies, like Loblaws raising prices, even though, profitability is through the
Yeah,
roof, but they have the ability because they don't really have any competition. I think that's a very fair perspective.
yeah, yeah. That's crazy.
But so, I mean, we've covered quite a few policies. I think it's getting a little bit long, so we'll cut it there. But before we do, let's break it down. What do you like and dislike about each party?
Mm.
I think that would kind of like summarize everything we've discussed. So let's start with the Liberals and Mark Carney. If you were to say there's one thing you like and one thing you dislike about the party or the candidate, what would you say those things are?
Ooh, okay. So I really liked the first time home buyers incentive, so the shared equity mortgages. I would just like to see proper execution and maybe faster turnover for people applying to that. And well, like I said, when I was working for Daniels, there was a lot of like they just made the specifications to apply like so difficult. So maybe that's something they could work on. So that one was my favorite policy that they had. My least favorite was probably the blind bidding. Like that kind of scares me as a seller.
Okay, fair. So
What about you for liberals?
here's my thought. So on the like side, I'm going to talk specifically to Mark Carney as an individual versus as a party. So yeah, interesting, right? What I like about Mark Carney is the fact that he has a lot of business experience. Like
Yes, I agree.
He used to work for Goldman Sachs. I think he was the chairman or he was on the board of Brookfield Asset Management. He's been
Yes.
the governor of Bank of Canada, the governor of the Bank of England. This person knows business, and he's been at high levels of business for a very long time. So I think when you compare him to the business experience of Pierre Poilievre, who's been a lifelong politician, I don't think that business experience matches. So from one
100%.
perspective, Mark has exceptional business experience. I don't know if his goals line up with Canada necessarily, that with the WEF and everything else, but that's a rabbit hole I'm not going to go down. So that's one thing I do like about specifically Mark Carney.
I
On the
agree.
dislike side, I read this online, and it's a comment on X, and I think it really really nails how I feel about where we are right now. And the comment was this: this election should be based on only one question. After 9 years of liberal government, are you better off? I don't think
Ooh,
we
oh,
are.
100%.
I don't think we are. I think that you know, maybe the first couple of terms we were better off, but I think things have taken a really negative direction. And I feel in politics, it's like a pendulum. Sometimes it swings too far to the left, sometimes it swings too far to the right. And I feel like there's got to be balance. And if there's just only one party getting elected over and over and over, how much change can we really expect to happen if also Mark Carney happened to be Trudeau's economic advisor for so long? So I don't think things would change. Like he's running on the campaign that, hey, we're going to fix things, but you've been in power for 9, 10 years, however long it is. Why is it broken?
Mm.
So that's the liberal side. So now let's flip to the conservative side. Any likes and dislikes?
I am not a I'm not big on politics. It's not my forte, but I've really grown to liking all of the little snippets that Pierre puts out on his social media. I've been eating it up, unfortunately, but I feel like there are some good things about his policies, and there's other things that I don't necessarily agree on, like the decrease in immigration. Like I feel like he's not big on immigration as maybe the liberals are, but um, I would hate to see like a halt in immigration like we're experiencing now. I feel like that's a pain point for me.
Okay. So on the like side, I think that I like his policies in general, like reducing immigration or at least capping it to how much housing we can build and removing red tape. I think those are really, really, really good policies. How well those are executed are a question mark. Again,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know. So,
Mhm.
but that goes with both parties, right? Like
Yeah,
everyone
for sure.
promises the world, and we get a fraction of that. But generally, I would say that that is a really good direction to pivot towards. On the
Yes.
dislike front, I actually will say I dislike what you like about him. So those off the cuff quips and jabs that he gives at reporters, sometimes he could be a little bit feisty, and he gets a lot of gotcha moments with reporters, and I think that takes away. Like it's super entertaining to watch. I do enjoy watching it, but I feel like it takes away from the authenticity and from just being like, hey, like be a professional. Let's if you disagree with something, like make a point about it, but without kind of irritating and
Rubbing
bugging
people
people.
the wrong
Because
way.
if you're trying to bring Canadians together, especially people from the far left, maybe it's
Mm,
people from the NDP or even liberals, whatever it is,
Mhm.
Just win on the policies. Don't do those jabs. Don't irritate the skin because it pulls people away from you. It distracts
Mm.
from your actual message. So I think that he has a little bit of an abrasiveness that I feel like people are apprehensive about, and I think that if that was removed, he would actually pull much better. But that's just my opinion.
But I also think that, like, Trump is super abrasive, and it's done very well for him.
I mean, and that could be why Pierre is doing the same. I think. I mean,
Mm,
from a social media
interesting.
perspective,
Oh,
all those gotcha moments are very very good, and they they make for great social media content, right? But
I feel
I
like
feel like
I've been, like, catfished.
fair, fair. But yeah, I think if you're trying to pull people from the other side, I think being a little bit abrasive like that isn't always
Hmm,
the best move. That's just my
okay.
perspective on it.
Or maybe you're
Um,
just a little soft.
perhaps, perhaps. Anyway, we'll leave it off there. I mean, we've shared quite a bit of information about the different policies and our perspectives. Before we go, Jenny, did you want to add any other comments?
I don't. I think I've said enough with my little Kim quote.
Yes, yes. I love the Kim quote. Buy with somebody else's money, not yours. Is that what it was? Yeah, I
Why
think it,
spend mine when I can spend yours? It was
yes,
from
yes.
Moulin
That's
Rouge.
perfect. That's a great way to great model, but to live by. But I think the one thing that I will say is if you should go out and vote.
Yeah,
That's how
100%.
I would I would leave it off. Don't sit on your hands. I know sometimes it feels maybe like our votes don't matter, but they really really do. And so my recommendation is if you're happy or unhappy one way or another, go vote.
Mhm.
There's no better way to be part of society than to go and voice how you feel and keep the people up top accountable.
Yes, 100%.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining us on the Toronto Brick by Brick podcast. We will be recording the next podcast in 2 weeks, and we hope to have you join us then. Make sure you hit subscribe and like and follow us for more.
Bye.